I forgot to mention one thing. In 1998, you founded Echa, the
Oh,
European Council for High Ability, and you said, well, in Nijmegen there are good things going on. What's her name of the professor? Rianne? I don't know. Yeah, Hogeveen.
yeah.
And so, are you still involved in that program? And you said good things are going on. Just talk just a tiny bit about Echa before we leave.
Oof. Oof. Let me see.
Are you still involved?
Yes, I'm still the founding president.
Of course.
I shall remain so. It was a kind of rebellion on the part of Europe. Well, as I said before, Americans have much more money than we have, and they have much more concern about things like achievement, I think, than in Europe. We tend to take it almost for granted. You know, you plant a child in a pot and put fertilizer on and hope that it grows. So we founded, me, Peter Span, who was born in Nijmegen, lived in Utrecht, a German and a Swiss woman. And the four of us together had to raise money. And remember, this is before 1989, when the wall came down in Berlin. And we are working with the Soviet Union, because the Soviet Union is in a very difficult position. I mean, they have no money. And I had this crazy idea that somewhere behind the Iron Curtain, there were amazing things going on. I mean, there were, you know, special classes. They had schools that taught in foreign languages. They had math schools. They had all sorts of things. But we had no means of knowing, of making holes in the Iron Curtain. And we had to do all sorts of very strange things, getting hold of dollars. We didn't actually sell jeans, but it was really pretty basic. And we brought across, well, we managed to get money. Philips helped us. Various groups helped us. The Germans put a lot of money into it. Is to bring across some Russians into the West. And some of us went across over there. I don't know how many times I went to Bulgaria, to Moscow, to various places, trying to, it sounds a bit crazy, to pull the whole of the Soviet Union into what they wanted, which was to know what was going on in the West. And we sort of went as ambassadors, in a way, concerned with their very brightest children. And the Russians were very concerned as well, because if you remember, they were winning all the prizes at the Olympics and everything. How did they do it? We wanted to know, because we all want to know, how do they do it? How do they bring their children up? In very brief, we did not expect it. Nobody expected it. The wall came down in Berlin. Ich bin ein Berliner. You know, you remember?
I remember. I was born in 1980, and at that moment, it's still very sharp.
So you were 9.
I was 9, but I remember these images very vividly.
You couldn't not. And so suddenly the world was open to us. And faxes were invented. Yeah, these are very basic practical things. But the people in the Soviet Union didn't know how to deal with faxes. They were closed at night, so you couldn't phone, because the phone lines weren't very good. You couldn't send a fax. You know, I'm talking here, we're building up an institution. It's really difficult. They had to learn how to do it. Then the Americans put a veto on, I think, fax machines to the Soviet Union. So they didn't even have them. So how do we get this information out? How do they train their Olympic athletes? And what's going on in the mathematics schools in Siberia? How are they running it? How do you get in the first place? We had a lot to learn. I can only say that I was somewhat disappointed. My hopes that they had good research going on there wasn't entirely met. They were doing things that we were not doing, like these specialist schools, for instance. But it didn't translate. we couldn't take it and do things with it, but we could bring people in across the once wall and engage with them and interact. So the aim was essentially to form a network where we could exchange information from our different countries about what was going on. And some countries had access to the sea and, I don't know, trade with foreign countries. Some do not. They're landlocked, for instance. And this is going to change the way people behave and how they spend their money.
So, and how did it go on from there? Because that was the early beginnings, but when you look at Echa, when you refer to Echa nowadays, it's really a well-renowned organization, and people call themselves Echa specialists. And if you're an Echa specialist, you know about giftedness. You spent 2 years doing a thorough master, and you know the basics. So how did you go there from your cooperation with the Russians to what it is now? What happened in the meanwhile?
Well, if you're making a network, you've got to supply the means of networking. We needed to be a proper academic organization. It wasn't just a question of standing up and saying what you think. We had to produce evidence of some sort. And to get the evidence around, you need a journal, actually. This is pre-internet, remember?
Yeah.
And you have to pay for that journal. The problem, we managed to get a very cheap deal in Bulgaria, in Sofia. I won't go to too much detail, but it was really, really difficult. And then you've got a journal, you've got information getting about. You need to be able to teach people who are teaching children what we know, not what we think we know. And we're not teaching the mythology. We're teaching what there is some evidence for. So we need to set up some sort of teaching diploma, degree, whatever. And we did that. 2 of us were professors. One, the German, was running a big organization in Germany. He managed to get us quite a lot of money. And the Swiss one was doing other things. And people wanted to join. So we set up a teaching branch. Again, you know, the Jacobson and Rosenthal stuff, for instance. It's not necessarily true. All the work that Bloom did, that Terman did, all these American studies, you cannot replicate those. It's a different population, it's a different sample, and we're talking Europe. And there are very big differences in the approach to education.
You were saying about American research, European research, you needed a magazine that represented the good, validated research.
Yes, and I did my stint as editor-in-chief. It's moved around quite a bit. Different editors choose different things. It stayed in Germany for quite a bit. Now it's based in Spain. You know, in the last conference, I'm not going to answer it. The last conference in The Hague, we had 800 people involved. I mean, really, and I wasn't there.
Yeah, huge. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel really, really pleased, and all that work, and we put in our own money. Yeah. We had to. You know, you can't build something from nothing. Money is important.
Yeah. So you were talking money. You need money in order to run an organization like Echa.
Well, I give you for instance, I mean, this is outrageous. We ran our first conference in Zurich, and our Swiss person enabled that. We had it in a 4-star hotel called the Hotel Zurich. Well, I mean, you don't get much more expensive than that. And my idea partly, I said, we must start as we mean to go on. You know, we are somebody, we had a big dinner, we, you know, did everything properly. The conference was opened by Sebastian Coe, who was winning gold medals in running constantly. So I've got a scoop there. And Peter Span and I put the money up for the Zurich Hotel. 300 people came day one. It was wonderful. So that's how we started. And after that, we went to universities, which wasn't as nice. But,
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I couldn't make other people do things, you know.
Yeah.
They wanted a university atmosphere.
Yeah, well, it is now. And when we talk about Echa, you think of the University of Nijmegen, you think of a master, you think of a nice validated program. And you know, when you're talking to an Echa specialist, that you're talking to a specialist. And that's, I think, well, you've come a long way, and I think it's amazing what you've achieved now. And I think it's a strong brand, the Echa brand. Right
I'm
now.
so pleased that you say that, really. And you know, we get a huge input from Dutch people. Dutch people are out of proportion to all the other European countries. I don't know why. Maybe you can suggest something.
I don't know either, but I do have a hinge. I think, you know, in Dutch education, we have well, let's call it a problem. We have I think, DSM-4 or 5 problem, because more and more children are diagnosed with some kind of illness. You know, 10% of Dutch children is diagnosed with ADHD. 10%. It's insane. It's insane. It's a business. And, you know, some people say that giftedness is the next disease. So it's yeah, that's really like that. They call it a hype. Oh, he's gifted. Of course, everybody is gifted. My neighbor is gifted. My dog is gifted. We're at that stage right now in the Netherlands.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's the same here. Well, not exactly. I don't think giftedness is on the program, but certainly, I don't know what the percentage is, but ADHD is very easy for a teacher to say.
Yeah.
You know, I think he's got ADHD.
Yeah.
and the parents believe it because the teacher is an authority figure.
Yeah, of course. And that results in certain expectations and certain behavior. And yeah, it's a menace right now in Dutch education, all the labels.
Yeah. Exactly my point. The labeling.
The labeling industry. And it's because behind it, there's a multi-billion dollar industry, the Ritalin industry and the Concerta industry, all those manufacturers that sell all their products to all those victims.
Are you still using Ritalin? I thought it was stopping.
No, it's really, it's insane, the amounts that people take in here. Yeah.
Good heavens.
Yeah. Concerta and Ritalin are the most popular medicines when it comes to ADHD.
Yeah. Oh yes. You know, I when I sort of retired from Echa and things, I ran my own private practice, which was doing very, very well until I got ill. But people would bring me children who they said the teacher said had ADHD, and so could I do something? Mostly I just say the teacher's talking rubbish.
Yeah,
because they had no clue.
No, of course. No, you know, a couple of years ago, I co-wrote a small booklet with a professor, Jelle Jolles is his name, and he said, well, you can only diagnose ADHD with a multidisciplinary. Well, you need more. You need a team in order to establish that diagnosis. And he says, if you are a hyperactive kid in school, but you are quiet at home, it's no ADHD. If you're hyperactive at home, but you're really quiet when you're doing ballet in school, you don't have ADHD. It's always a context. And that's what many people,
Totally agree with you, Chairman.
yeah, so that's what many people forget. And teachers have the guts to tell that this guy has ADHD. He doesn't know the whole context, but still people buy it. So I think that's a real epidemic going on right now.
I think it is. I think that word is correct, actually.
Yeah. So we talked about, in the first part of the conversation, we talked about giftedness. We talked about your life, your contributions. In the second part, we talked about Echa, which I also really like doing. So I'm going to cut this interview in two parts. First part, giftedness and your work. And the second part, I'm going to call the history of Echa. And I'm going to publish that as a separate file, because I think otherwise it might be really long, because we've been talking for an hour and a half.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's too long, just for for people's attention. So I'm going to cut it in two parts. I'm going to call the last part the history of Echa, because I really loved your story about the Berlin Wall, about your collaboration with the Russians, and I didn't have any clue. I think it was amazing. So I would like to thank you for all these amazing anecdotes and stories and everything you shared. And I'm sure we have very nice material for some decent videos about you, your work, your life, and Echa.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
This has been very good and very enjoyable.
Yeah.
And you made me look back and think, my God, did I do that?
Yeah, you did. Amazing. So you are writing your memoirs right now. So just let me know when it's finished, and I will spend some. I will give it some attention and make sure people in the Netherlands will know about it, because of course you need a network as well to promote.
Oh God! I tell my children they can pick up the royalties, and I won't be here.
You think so? Yeah. So it's you're just taking your time, doing really slowly, writing down.
Well, sorry, I don't wish to keep you. Writing an autobiography, I'm finding is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Because if you write an academic paper, of which I've written many, you know where you stand. You've got an abstract, you've got an introduction,
Yeah.
and it's limited. But an autobiography, things trigger off something else, and I must put this in and that in. Who cares anyway?
Yeah.
Get a readership of 4 people. Yeah. You will be one of them.
Yeah. Well, I wish you all the best, and I will be sending you my interviews as well, because I really like your feedback.
Do you? Ah.
Yeah, I do. I like what you had to say about Jane Elliott, about Rosenthal as well, and I love the fact, and Chomsky and Crystal, you always have nice feedback, and I really enjoy that. So you will be receiving my interview, and let's keep in contact, and let's keep writing once in a while.
Please do. Yes, I'd like that.
Thank you very much for your time. You were really generous.
All right.